Hi everyone, I'm Abby. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm talking about what I've knit in the past couple-ish months, April and May. I've got a finished object. I finally finished my oon and a couple other projects to show you. So let's just dive in. This is going to be a little bit of a quicker episode because we are about to head off on 2 back-to-back trips and there's a lot to do around my house. But one of the things that I need to do is show you what I've been knitting. I also want to tell you about the t-shirt that I'm wearing. This is from Shelly Can. This is a new t-shirt. It says, "This is your brain on crafts," and it's really cute and I've been wearing it a lot. So just wanted to address the t-shirt. Okay, finished objects. So I finally finished my oon sweater. This is by November Knits. I cast this on at the end of February. So this took a little bit of time, even though it is a worsted weight sweater and it did knit up quite quickly. I just set it down while working on other projects. But I really like it. This is knit out of Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino in the blood orange color, which is just a fantastic color. And yeah, I really like how it turned out. So this is a fairly classic raglan pattern. You start at the top with the ribbing, you knit a little bit of a wider neck. I think it suits the style. And then once you split for the sleeves, you also split the hem. So for the majority of the side, it is split open, and I think it's just a really fun style. And then you don't do very many decreases for the sleeves, so those are left kind of loose, and then just got the 2x2 ribbing at the cuffs. And I did a 2x2 tubular bind off. It's really just the 1x1 tubular bind off, but there is a technique where you don't have to rearrange your stitches before you do it. Okay, here's what it looks like on, and I'm gonna take a step back in a minute so you can see the full thing. But I wanna talk about the sizing. So I knit the size 3, which is 95 centimeters. That's about 37.5 inches circumference. And I feel like it is a pretty good size for me. That's about an inch or so bigger than like my full bust measurement. I like the oversized fit. I think now that I've like fully finished the sweater, the yoke depth is like maybe a little bit deeper than I would have wanted. So I think I could have gone down to a size 2, but I'm not mad about the fit. So here's how it fits. This is after I have blocked it. And I think 2 things I would like to address now that I've blocked it. One is that I feel like the sleeves are a little bit wrinkly, and I want to try steaming them out. It might be a little bit more noticeable on this sleeve, but I want it to be a little bit more of a flexible fabric, I guess. It's still a little bit like wrinkly and stiff. So I want to try steaming it, and then I also want to try steaming the ribbing, because even though I think it looks really nice, I just wish that it was like ever so slightly more open. So I'm just gonna try hitting those areas with a little bit of steam and see if that helps what I'm noticing. But overall, I think those are pretty small things because I am really happy with the way that this turned out. And this also knit up quite quickly. I haven't knit a worsted weight sweater in a while, and I think I forgot that worsted weight is really that sweet spot as far as like knitting comfort and also speed. So this was a really great knit for me. I kind of want another one. I don't know if I need 2 of the same style since it is a fairly unique style, but I did really like making this. A couple of things that I modified. One was not on purpose. If you notice, under the arms, I carried the raglan ribbing down the side and then transitioned that into the rest of the ribbing at the hem. That's not in the pattern. I just kind of made an assumption about the pattern and I kept going with the ribbing. In the pattern, it's just stockinette under the armpit. And I did talk in a vlog about how I maybe liked it my way better, but I think now that I finished it, I kind of don't have an opinion either way. I mean, I don't think it looks bad. I think it looks nice that it that it keeps that like strong line going, but I also don't mind the stockinette, so I don't know. The other thing I did was I shortened the body, and I also shortened the sleeves. I shortened the sleeves by quite a bit. I knit my first sleeve and it was just very long, and it was also very loose. So I did add a couple more decreases into the sleeves just so that it wasn't like overly huge. I wanted the oversized fit, but when I first knit it, I felt like it was coming out really big. And then, yeah, I also shortened them, and I really like where they hit me. I did also go up a needle size to hit gauge because in the pattern, it calls for a fluffy strand to be held to get this gauge. So I didn't get the same kind of bloom that you would get with like a mohair, but I just went up a needle size to account for that. Also, I knit the second sleeve in almost a day. Like once I had reknit the first sleeve and I figured out what I wanted to do with it, the second sleeve went by very quickly. So that was just really nice to be able to make really quick progress when I was focused on it. Yeah, I really like this sweater. I mean, I really only have good things to say. The pattern is very simple and there's not like a whole lot to it, but if you like this style, I can definitely recommend it. And I don't know, maybe I'll make another one. Moving on to whips, I do have some updates on the bulky traveler that I'm knitting for my boyfriend, including some unfortunate news. Well, unfortunate for me, which is that I did have to buy more expensive yarn for this gigantic sweater. So I'm also gonna stand up for this one to show you the whole thing. Okay, so here's the sweater. You can see that it is long and it is quite oversized. This is basically the Traveler pattern by Andrew Mallory, but I have modified it to be in this super bulky gauge, and I've also just knit it in stockinette. So you can see that there aren't any ridges. It's just stockinette because this is such a busy yarn. But here's the progress I've made. I think last I showed you on the podcast, I was still knitting the body, but I have since finished the shoulders. I finished the neckline, which it's a little bit hard to see, but I think you can understand that's the neckline. And then I also finished a sleeve. And I did have to completely reknit the sleeve because even though I converted the pattern and I figured out what I should be doing with the gauge that I'm getting, there's still a little bit of trial and error, especially with something this bulky. This is 3 strands of worsted weight held together, and I'm never knitting something like this again, but it is worth it because this is what my boyfriend wanted. He wanted a very bulky and very oversized hoodie, so that's what he's getting. But yes, here's the sleeve that I ended up with. I think it's just a fairly standard sized sleeve. But when I first picked up the stitches and I started decreasing at the rate in the Traveler pattern, it was getting way too small, way too quickly. So I just started over and I calculated a decrease rate that made sense based on the sleeve of another one of his hoodies that I'm sort of modeling this after, and reknit it, and it's much more normal looking. And then I've also started on the second sleeve. This is pretty slow going, even though it is super bulky, just because it is pretty hard to work with. I'm knitting this on size 11 needles, and I mean, these are large needles, and it is a little bit hard on my hands. So even though the actual stitches don't take that long to knit, I can only knit like a few rounds at a time and then I put it down. So I do wish this was done already because I don't want to be knitting this giant bulky sweater in the middle of summer, but I'm doing my best. The yarn that I'm using is, like I mentioned, a combination of 3 strands of worsted weight. So I'm holding 1 strand of this beautiful hand-dyed yarn from Monostel Uruguay. This is the Alegria line, and so it's a worsted weight. And these were like exactly the colors that he was looking for, but he wanted it toned down a little bit by holding it with black. So this is just some Cascade 220. I'm holding 2 strands of the Cascade and 1 strand of the Monostel Uruguay. And it's turning out really, really well despite my complaints because I just don't like knitting with bulky yarn, and anything over a bulky is also just not very fun for me. So like I said, this is probably going to be the one and only sweater I knit like this, but I am happy to deliver on a request for my life partner. He deserves it. So we are pulling through and we're gonna get this done. So after I knit the sleeve, I'm going to work on the hood. I have calculated all of that out, but I think I might make some tweaks to it once I start on that. So I'll let you know how that goes. And then he also has added to the original request, there has been a change order, and he would like a pocket on the front, just like a regular kangaroo style hoodie pocket. So, and he's okay with it just being like a patch pocket, which is good because that's all I can do at this stage. So I'm gonna do that once I knit the hood. And I don't think that'll be too difficult to figure out. Like, that should be pretty simple. But once again, you will be the first to know how that goes. Probably the second, actually, because my boyfriend will be the first to know. For my next whip, I don't think I have shown you these yet, but I started another handspun project, and this is the first sock. So this is for the 3-ply 2 ways spinning challenge that Andrea Mowry hosted. I think it already closed. I think it closed at the start of May. So I did not get my socks done in time, but I had a lot of fun doing this spinning challenge. So I'm working on the second sock. This is what I have left of the yarn. But the idea behind this challenge was to spin 2 different yarns, 2 different 3-ply yarns from the same braid, and then stripe the 2 yarns together in a pair of socks. I didn't do anything different from what Andrea did with her spin. So for the first skein, I split my half braid in 3 sections, and then each of those 3 sections I flipped, well, I split in half again, and then I flipped one of the lengths, and I parallel drafted those 2 together to get a more heathered look to my skein. So that's the first skein that I got. And then for the second skein, I just did a chain ply so that you get these long color changes. I was aiming for a fingering weight and I got very close. I would say that my traditional 3-ply is exactly a fingering weight and my chain ply is just a little bit thicker. It's not quite a sport weight, but it is a little bit thicker. I definitely noticed that while knitting. I think in the finished object, you can't really notice it, so it's all good. So my grist was almost the same. I got very close. It wasn't exact, but I'm very happy with how close I got because I was a little bit nervous doing this challenge. Like, what if I knit 2 completely different types of yarn? And this was a braid from Hello Yarn. It is a Romney and it's in the colorway Lowering Skies. It's a really pretty colorway and I think it worked out quite well for this challenge. I wasn't really sure how it was going to turn out, but I really like the way that the stripes worked up. So this is the DRK Everyday Sock pattern, which is what was part of the challenge, and you knit these toe up and you do a fleagle heel, and then it's really just a 2x2 sock after that. So there's not a whole lot to it, but it just creates a nice, well-fitting basic sock. And I have gotten started on the second one, and I just hit the point where I'm gonna start the heel. So that's how the colors are turning out on the second one. And I'm knitting these on a US 0, so they are quite dense. And I think with the Romney, these are gonna be very sturdy socks, so I'm excited about that. I did have to re-knit the heel on the first sock, which if you've knit a fleagle heel, you would know that you actually start quite a ways into the foot. So like I started my heel here because you do all of your gusset increases and then you shape the heel. And so it's quite a lot of knitting, but I just knit my foot too long. I'm still kind of figuring out exactly how the fleecle heel fits me, but also I think with my slightly thicker chain ply, it just was coming out a little bit, like my row gauge was a little bit bigger than the row gauge in the pattern. So I did have to frog that and restart, but now I know exactly what to do for my second sock. So I don't think it's gonna take too long to knit the rest of it. The one thing I am concerned about is if I have enough yarn. This looks like not a lot of yarn, but when I finished spinning, these skeins did look very small, so it is a little bit more than what it looks like. But I just left the yarn tail on this one because if I need to, once I get further into the second sock, I will just rip back this until I get to the point where I have enough yarn to finish this and match the leg lengths. So I'm not too concerned, like this is just gonna turn out however it turns out. And I just knit 4 rounds of each yarn to stripe them. I cast on a new sweater. I am getting really excited about summer knits, and I found a new to me yarn that I really wanted to try. So here's what I have so far. This is the Pinta Pillar Pullover by James & Watts. It is a modular t-shirt style, and if you know James Watts, he does a lot of modular patterns, and I've really been wanting to try one for a long time, and I finally decided to cast on the Pinta Pillar, and it's actually like this. So this is the back panel, and I'm working on my 5th and final pillar on the back. So that is how it's turning out. This is knit up really fast. I'm actually knitting this at a fingering weight gauge. The pattern calls for a sport weight, but I think it has just been my MO recently to change the gauge of every pattern I knit. But I'm working this up at a fingering weight because I really wanted to try this yarn. This is from Lang Yarns, and it's their Linello yarn. So it is a cotton and linen blend. It's about 50-50 each. It's sort of a pain in the ass to wind up because it really likes to knot on itself. But working with it is fairly nice. I am just working with it on my regular metal needles, and the only thing is that the needles have a tendency to slip out of the stitches, but I don't really mind that. I just slip them back in, and otherwise it's perfectly fine. It's not really that hard on my hands. I think it's a nice blend with cotton and linen. I've worked with just linen before, and that's like a little bit too difficult for me, but it's been really nice so far. And this pattern is great. No notes, actually a couple of notes, and it's just the modifications that I've made. So like I mentioned, I'm knitting it at a fingering weight. My stitch gauge is 5.4 stitches per inch. The pattern stitch gauge is 4.5 stitches per inch. So that kind of gives you an indication of like the gauge change. And then my row gauge is actually not too far off. It's 7.5 and the pattern is 7. And I did modify the length. So because this is the back, this will be the shoulders, and then this is the hem before you do the ribbing. And I shortened mine by 3 inches. So the pattern calls for 23.25 inches in length, and I knit mine at 20.25 inches. And that is just because I'm short. So I just have to shorten my sweaters. But yeah, it's really looking good. And I think that's all I'm gonna say because I am filming a progress vlog, and I will talk more about how it's going and my experience knitting it in that vlog. My last whip is one that you have seen before, but I hadn't really made much progress on it. And it's another hand-spun project. This is the Harlow hat that I am knitting out of some handspun from Nest Fiber. This was a Rambouillet that I got from I think her winter club of this year. I think this was the January month, and it's called Love Spell. And it's just a really pretty pink and lavender. It's kind of all my favorite like pinkish colors. And I just thought it would work really well as a single color Harlow hat. And this is a 3-ply worsted weight yarn. So I just modified the Harlow pattern to be worsted weight. There's obviously a Harlow worsted pattern, but I just own the Harlow. So I just cast on a number of stitches that was divisible by 8 that I thought would fit my head. And I think it's gonna work out. And I'm using a US 6 needle. And I'm actually knitting this to have a brim that folds over, which is funny because Andrew Mallory just came out with the worsted Harlow Flip, which is a worsted weight Harlow with a flipped brim. But that is a 2-color pattern. And so when you flip up the brim, it's gonna show the other side. Because this is just a 1 color, like I don't have to worry about anything. And actually I knit the majority of this while I was on a walk around my neighborhood. I talked about this briefly in one of my vlogs, but I have never really knit and walked at the same time. A lot of people say that it's great. And I just never really like tried it before. I've like knit and walked around my house, but I had never tried like actually taking it with me on a walk. And so we walked probably about 2 miles and I got a lot done and it was great. I loved it and I'm definitely gonna walk and knit again. And a while back I made this bag which just sits on my wrist, and so it's really convenient to just pop my yarn in there and hold it while I knit. The last like knitting related thing I wanted to show you real quick is the Brooklyn Tweed yarn that I picked up. I'm sure everyone knows that Brooklyn Tweed is no longer selling yarn, and it's pretty sad. I mean, I haven't worked with a lot of their yarn, but I appreciate them for everything that they have been. And they are still going to be selling patterns, but they're getting rid of all of their yarn and they had a sale. And I did decide to pick something up. I just wanted to get one type of yarn. I didn't want to go crazy, but I decided to try a yarn that I have not tried from them, which is their Tones line. And it just got really stormy, so my lighting is a little bit bonkers, but I think this is picking up fairly accurately. So this is one of their Overtones. This is in the Zest colorway, and I just really liked this one a lot. So I just got as much as I could, as much as they had left of this one. That's what I have. And it might be enough for a sweater quantity. I might have to add a yarn to it. It might be good for like the base of a colorwork yoke sweater. I'm not entirely sure, but I did have to get something just for the mems. And I really like this color a lot. I'm actually a little bit shook at like how dark it just got, but that's okay because I don't have anything else to show you. I'm just gonna be talking about what I have been reading and watching and what I've been cooking and baking. And if you're just here for the knitting, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. So I have not watched a single movie since February. It was the last movie that I talked about on the podcast, which is insane. I need to step up my movie game, and I will be because there are some really good movies coming out or that have already come out. I haven't seen Sinners yet. I really want to, and I think I'm gonna miss the theatrical release because I haven't made it to my movie theater yet, and I'm about to go on my trip, so I think I'm gonna have to watch that on streaming, which is a bummer. I really wanted to watch that one. But I am also very excited for 28 Years Later coming out in June. Summerween is coming. It is going to be such a vibe. As far as TV, I have just kind of been watching what everyone else is watching. I finished The Pitt on Max and it was so good. I'm not a medical drama person at all. I haven't seen any of them except for like a couple seasons of Grey's Anatomy, and I'm just like not really into it. I get squeamish and it's just not really an interest of mine. But The Pitt, it was so good. I'm really glad that people convinced me to try it out. I think the craziest thing about it is that it doesn't have a score to it. And so there's like basically no background music, and you are still like completely enthralled in it. I was glued to the screen. I watched every second of that show, and it's pretty realistic medically from what I've heard. So it is not like easy to watch, but I watched every second of that show. As far as reading, I just finished a little Iain Reid marathon. This was an author I'd never read from before, but he kind of writes like somewhat horror, like a little sci-fi, kind of spooky, mysterious, slow burn books, and I started with the book We Spread, which is about an elderly woman whose life partner has passed away, and her landlord is insisting that she needs to move into a long-term care facility. And she's kind of forced into it, and she really doesn't want to be there. She just wants to be left alone. But she starts meeting people and making friends, and things are actually going pretty well, until some weird things start happening, and she starts to lose her grip on reality and on time passing, and who actually has her best interest and who the others really are. And this is not a book where you definitively find out exactly what happens at the end of the book, but it is very atmospheric. And so if you're looking for a mysterious, slightly spooky, kind of unsettling book about how we choose to live our lives and the role of art and our own productivity and our relationship to others, and ultimately what it's like to grow old, I would recommend this one. And after I finished it, I was in the mood for more Iain Reid, so I started his book Foe, which is probably his most popular one. And I watched the movie, I think back in 2023, because it stars Saoirse Ronan and Paul Mescal. It's very similar to the movie from what I remember. I just finished the book, and I was expecting to like it more than We Spread, especially because I already knew the story and I found it a little bit more intriguing. It's about a young couple set in the future when climate change has kind of destroyed everything, and this government contracting company is enlisting people to go work on another planet, I think essentially to terraform it so that people can go live there. And so the husband is being sent there, but he doesn't want to go, and they create a clone of him to stay back with his wife so that she doesn't get lonely while he's gone for a few years. And I think especially right now with the way that AI has taken over, this is a pretty interesting read. It is slower than what I expected. You don't really find out a whole lot about what's actually going on until really close to the end. And I did get a little bit frustrated by the main character, the husband, and his point of view, and just being stuck in his point of view only, because he is questioning everything a lot, but he's not really doing anything about it. And so sometimes I find that frustrating in books, but overall it was a good read. I gave it 4 stars, which is what I also gave We Spread. And it made me want to rewatch the movie as well, because I remember liking the movie a little bit more than I liked the book. But I also remember being kind of disappointed when I finished the movie. I was left with this feeling there was something else that it didn't quite hit home for me. I might be misremembering because it's been a while, but anyway, I want to rewatch the movie. Lastly, what I've been baking and cooking, I have not been baking anything, but I do have a few recipes that I've made recently that I thought were really good. The first one is these black bean and sweet potato enchiladas by Cookie and Kate. These are way better than they have any right to be. Something about these flavors, there's green enchilada sauce. Actually, I think she uses salsa verde, but I just used green enchilada sauce. And then I used flour tortillas instead of corn, but I don't think you can go wrong here. All of these flavor profiles work so well with each other, in a surprising way. I also just made this pesto pasta salad by Recipe 10 Eats. It is a very simple recipe, but we went to Costco recently and I bought their pesto, which is, as far as grocery store pestos go, it's quite good. It's not gonna be better than fresh made pesto, but it's quite delicious. But you have to buy a big jar of it. And so I've just been trying to find pesto recipes, and this was one of them, and it was really good. An interesting thing about this recipe is that you add a tablespoon of mayo to the noodles before you put the pesto on it. But it's not a mayo-based pasta salad recipe. It just helps add a little bit of moisture to the pasta salad a little bit of creaminess. I've also been making pesto grilled cheeses recently, which is just a grilled cheese where you put pesto on it, and very good. Pesto, bread, and cheese. How can that not be delicious? I have 2 more recipes because I've been doing a ton of meal planning and a lot of cooking. Recently, I made these tofu lettuce wraps by Sarah's Vegan Kitchen. They're so simple to make, and I feel like lettuce wraps are really underrated, and we make them pretty often. And then the last recipe is actually one that I tried today. It is the ditalini and asparagus from Haley Catalano. I think she's popping off on TikTok. I don't have TikTok, so I don't really know, but this recipe got really popular. I heard about it and I just tried it out. I was not expecting this to be as good as I ended up thinking it was. It's really a simple recipe, but it's something a little bit different, at least for me. It's just pasta and asparagus and cheese, but it uses mascarpone cheese, and it makes it really easy because you just put that into the skillet and add some pecorino cheese. I think I just use Parmesan. But then you just stir that up with some pasta water while, like the same pasta water that your asparagus has been cooking in for a few minutes. And you stir it all up, you add the noodles, and there you go. Super easy, and it was just really tasty, and I think it's gonna be really good for leftovers. All right, well, that's all that I have. The storm came in at the perfect time, I guess, right here at the end. I hope that you are having a good spring and getting ready for some summer knitting. And hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye!